Hi there, I'm Chris Glover. Tonight, Toronto and Peel region brace for a lockdown.
My first thoughts are that the government gave up on us.
The letdown that just won't let up. We break down what's being forced to shut down.
Love the people you live with and love spending some time with them.
And the new rules you'll have to follow even at home. Plus, the Toronto invention that's out of this world. The man who's turning his love for his mother into a passion project to help you cope. And coping skills are certainly being tested for all of us, especially in Toronto and Peel. Monday, the GTA's two biggest health regions go back into lockdown. Unlike in the spring, schools and childcare spaces will stay open, along with a limited number of businesses deemed essential. But as Lorenda Redekop shows us, officials hope these new rules will hit home.
I know this is difficult news today. It's not where we want to be.
Toronto and Peel region both move into lockdown starting Monday for the next 4 weeks. Hair salons and other personal care services have to close. Restaurants and bars will be pickup and delivery only. Not even patios allowed anymore. Malls have to close with curbside pickup allowed. One exception, essential stores inside can remain open. Essential businesses include grocery stores, pharmacies, and big box stores.
So please, folks, avoid panic buying right now. I'm going to repeat that. Please avoid panic buying right now. There's no need to buy more than you need for a week or two.
Places of worship will have a limit of 10 people inside, 10 outside, including for weddings. Gyms must close. People are asked to only gather inside with people from their own household, unless they live alone. Then they can join one other household.
It's clear more needs to be done to limit community transmission of COVID-19 so that we can keep our schools open, safeguard our health system capacity, and protect our most vulnerable.
Post-secondary schools, though, will move to virtual learning with some exceptions. During the pandemic, most of the people who've died have been seniors, many living in long-term care homes.
Certainly, this could have been done a few weeks ago, and we may be paying a longer price of a lockdown because we've let it get so far under control, and it's going to take much longer to suppress levels of transmission.
These measures are not even close to the severity of the first lockdown, when stores, restaurants, and schools had to completely shut down. The biggest jump in how people are becoming infected is through a close contact, followed by community spread. The Premier finished with this message for people.
You know, tough times don't last, but tough people do. And we have the toughest people, the most resilient people anywhere in the entire world. I want to give people hope. We have a vaccine that should be online shortly.
This lockdown is set to last for 28 days, though it will be regularly reviewed. There are still details to be worked out, such as the government's recommendations to people for the holidays. The Premier says that will be coming in the next few days. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
A lot of what's allowed to happen at the holidays is going to depend on personal actions. And while there'll be sacrifices across the board, businesses will bear the brunt. With that slice of the story tonight, let's get outside live to Angelina King joining us from Liberty Village. And Angelina, we're already seeing signs of the lockdown.
Yeah, it certainly is looming, Chris. When I was out speaking with a restaurant owner earlier tonight, inspectors actually came by to make sure everybody was following the rules that a lot of restaurant owners, particularly those who poured a lot of money into their patios, aren't too happy with tonight. And while the city is praising the province's decision to move Toronto into a lockdown, I went out and asked Torontonians what they think. Many of them were out tonight enjoying a patio while they still can. After news of a lockdown and 3 nights left to enjoy a patio, King Street West got busy.
Let's go out and try to have a little bit of a good time before it all closes down.
Along with a crowd at Regular's Bar, inspectors came by to ensure all the rules were being followed. They were, and with only 3 nights left, frustration from the owner.
Well, my first thoughts are that the government gave up on us.
Patrick Marzouk says he spent nearly $100,000 outfitting his patio with heaters, plexiglass, tents, decor, and more.
We weren't going to recoup that. Now we're losing that. Now we're forced to close. We're never going to make that up. Every step of the way with COVID and all the different restrictions that were put on us, I've pivoted.
The pivoting continues in the only Ontario city where indoor dining was already prohibited.
The numbers continue to go in the wrong direction, despite the City of Toronto having the strictest existing restrictions in the province.
Since October 1st, the city reported more than 16,600 new cases, making up 45% of all the cases in Toronto so far. While the city says a lockdown is necessary, Torontonians aren't as sure.
Do you think it was the right move?
I mean, yes and no. It's going to just really depend on whether the numbers go down and by doing the lockdown.
I just think there's other alternatives.
It has to happen. It does have to happen.
We know how much more clear we feel mentally when we come out, and it's natural to be social.
I think it's actually a really good thing. I think that this is something that should happen.
The city says on top of the lockdown, more needs to be done, including increasing accessible testing in Toronto's hardest hit areas and support for those who find it difficult to stay home if they're sick or need to isolate alone.
We've already lost more than 1,500 lives to COVID-19. I don't want to see deaths in our city numbering in the higher thousands.
Come Monday, regulars will be closed completely. The owner says it's not worth doing takeout. A hard pill to swallow, he says, as he argues restaurants are safe.
It's because of all the different restrictions and guidelines that were been put on us.
But Davila says even if the risk is low, it's not zero.
Particularly in those events where people get together in a very relaxed environment with.
So I asked the city if there'll be more enforcement out to ensure people are following these new lockdown measures, and the mayor says it's just not realistic having officers out on every street ensuring people are, keeping 2 meters apart while waiting in line for curbside pickup, for example, or going up to people outside to ensure they're part of the same household. He says the best course of action really is to just stay home. Chris?
Dramatic steps for a very dramatic time. Thanks for this tonight, Angelina. And it's far from just restaurants and bars. Today's announcement was difficult news for other businesses in Toronto and Peel. As Greg Ross explained, some downtown business owners are saying this lockdown could be the final straw.
Gyms, sports facilities, cinemas must close.
They're the words that Steve Lachelt was dreading.
We're screwed, yeah.
Just 7 days after being told he could partially reopen his gym with a maximum of 10 people at a time, he once again has to close his doors.
I'd like to ask Doug Ford, what's changed in 7 days? What was so different 7 days ago that he couldn't predict this?
He says he invested a lot in reopening, and now he has no way to recoup that money.
I paid for a social media campaign to welcome new customers back, to let them know we're open. I had to rally my staff.
Lachelt says they were taking every precaution to keep customers safe, like physical distancing, wearing masks, and sanitizing regularly, something he says the province should have taken into consideration.
I just wish they could have left us alone to do what we were doing. It was safe, it was good.
A sentiment shared by the owner of this barbershop on Dundas Street West.
I don't want to discredit the severity of the virus at all. We're doing everything we can to be the most careful. But it seems like they're more worried about opening and shutting as opposed to regulating while open. I don't know one business that's seen an inspector through.
He says this lockdown couldn't have come at a worse time for his industry.
Giving us a month before Christmas to shut down when every year this is the busiest month of the year for us. So my guys are stressed out. My barbers are freaking out because this is the money-making time, and especially with the year we've had, it would be nice to make up a little bit of that back.
This man says he stopped by for a haircut because he heard the lockdown was coming. He has sympathy for small business owners, but says he understands the other side as well.
We've got to flatten that curve, otherwise it's going to get out of hand.
And while business owners like Lachelt also understand that, he wonders if there's a better way.
The worst impacted people will be small business people in Toronto, like myself. I don't consider us the worst offenders of this. We're collateral damage. We're taking it for the team.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Business is also very concerned that this lockdown is going to be damaging for these small business owners. In fact, they're calling on the government to develop some sort of policy to help these small businesses remain open with capacity limits. Now, the province did announce $600 million in funding for these small businesses that are being forced to close or significantly reduce their services. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, Peel's medical officer of health is welcoming the lockdown, but Dr. Lawrence Lowe says it's not enough.
It's a short-term emergency brake sort of situation to just get community transmission under control. What I want to see over the 28 days, though, is continuing conversation around those additional supports that are needed to address outbreaks in essential workplaces, outbreaks in large households and congregate housing. And so as we bring the isolation center online, as we continue to work with the Ministry of Labour and workplaces to protect our workers, these are all going to be essential pieces, together with engaging the community, that will hopefully help us to really address COVID-19 that is spreading especially amongst the most vulnerable in our population.
Dr. Lowe says the situation is dire in a number of Peel's hospitals. William Osler in Brampton is over capacity. Lowe said just today at Osler, 74 people were admitted, some with COVID who couldn't get a bed and are being treated in a hallway or another unconventional space. Now to Etobicoke, where a cyclist in his 40s has died after being hit by a cement truck. It happened on a street where residents have been raising concerns over dangerous truck traffic for more than a decade.
We've been fighting this company for over 12 years. The catchphrase in the neighborhood is it's an accident waiting to happen, and it has. It's happened.
The incident happened outside ML Ready Mixed Concrete on Judson Street near Royal York Road just after 5 p.m. Paramedics say the man died on the scene. According to police, the driver was not impaired at the time and remained at the scene. Royal York Road is closed from Newcastle Street to Judson for this investigation. Toronto police are searching for suspects tonight after an SUV hit an officer and damaged a police cruiser. Police were responding to a call near the shops at Don Mills around noon today. That's when officers attempted to pull over a vehicle. The driver drove off, hitting a cruiser and an officer. The officer suffered a foot injury from the collision. Police say the suspects fled in a black Range Rover, and they're asking anyone with information or video to come forward. We're learning more tonight about what led up to the shooting death of an OPP officer on Manitoulin Island. The province's Special Investigations Unit says 2 officers were called to investigate a report from a Gore Bay homeowner of an unwanted man on their property. Police located the suspect inside a trailer. Moments later, there was an interaction and an exchange of gunfire. Constable Mark Hoving was struck by a bullet and died later in the hospital. The 60-year-old suspect, whose name hasn't been released, was also hit and died from his injuries. The second officer wasn't hurt. An update for you tonight on what is shaping up to be the longest search for a new police chief in the city's history. In the past, it's taken just weeks, but as John Lancaster reports, this time a new chief won't be selected until sometime next year. Here's why.
Toronto's interim police chief James Raymer was appointed in June after the last chief, Mark Saunders, retired before his 6-year term was up. Now we're learning Raymer's stay at the helm will likely last many more months. Today, in a statement to CBC News, the executive director of the Toronto Police Services Board confirmed the board has heard very clearly the calls from the public and from Toronto City Council that this time more than ever, a wide-ranging approach to public consultations on the skills, attributes, and vision of the next chief of police is vital. I fully expect this process to conclude in 2021 with the appointment of Toronto's next chief of police.
We have a lot of issues going on in the city.
Toronto lawyer Selwyn Peters says as the police service undertakes massive reforms, a new chief is needed urgently.
The expectation was that this process would have concluded within months following the June resignation of the chief of police.
Toronto's last interim chief was in 2005. Mike Boyd coaxed out of retirement for just 5 weeks until Bill Blair, now a Liberal MP, was chosen as the new chief. This time, on top of the required public consultations, the new chief will face even newer challenges. The police service is implementing dozens of new reforms, including how they deal with the mentally ill, making new inroads into marginalized communities, and even new use of force regulations. John Lancaster, CBC News, Toronto.
I wish I could tell you I was visiting from the future, but these are the types of things being created in our current pandemic world.
It is crazy, but sometimes unprecedented times call for unprecedented solutions.
I'm Talia Ricci, and coming up, we'll meet the designer and learn a little more about it.
We say goodbye to the mild temperatures. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy, and we are going to be seeing more of a wintry mix for the second half of the weekend. Quite a change. That's all coming up. The details after the break.
The Raptors will begin the new NBA season in Tampa, Florida, after their request to play home games in Toronto was denied. Team president Masai Ujiri said the team worked closely with public health officials to create a plan for them to play at the Scotiabank Arena, but ultimately the pandemic derailed those plans. Ujiri thanked health officials and said he's hopeful the team can play at home in the future. He, of course, encouraged fans to cheer from afar adding the team looks forward to being back together again. Likely a lot of disappointed fans in those condo towers as we look live tonight at the Toronto Harbor after what has been a very nice day, weather-wise anyways. And the weather is set to take a disappointing turn, unfortunately, especially if you like the warmth of the last couple days. Colette Kennedy joins us now with your weather picture. Take it away, Colette.
Thanks, Chris. Some incredible conditions today, no doubt about it. You know, the high, the record is 19 degrees, and unofficially we were just over 17. So, yeah, we didn't get a record, but still, if you had a chance to be outside today, it may have been a little blustery, but just phenomenal. Another phenomenal day in the month of November, well above seasonal. But now it's time for the winds of change. We knew they were coming, so cooler air will be moving in. We're going to kind of transition to it overnight tonight as the winds shift to the northwest. So we'll still be above seasonal overnight, but tomorrow daytime highs back to where they essentially should be at this time of year. But Sunday, it cools down. We have a system moving in, so we're looking at a wintry mix. So I'm going to show you how that's going to sort of time out through here. And then another storm and possibly another winter mix coming towards midweek next week. So we're kind of turning in a completely different direction. Speaking of the winds of change, right? Daytime highs, looking at these numbers, even Ottawa today, yesterday it was a little cooler, but 15 today, Kingston 15 as well. Oshawa, even with the southwesterly flow, made it to the mid-teens, and there's that 17 for Toronto. St. Catharines at 16, where the winds were a little stronger through the day. And Windsor, how about that? 19 degrees for the daytime high. Now, overnight tonight, we'll still have some cloud cover, and for a good mid portion of the day tomorrow, we'll see mostly cloudy conditions. You may get some better breaks towards southwestern Ontario at times, and also towards eastern Ontario, but kind of in between will be socked in somewhat. Then we get this kind of brief break as high pressure will build in towards Saturday night, but it's going to be brief. And it's that balance between this ridge of high pressure and a system that's coming in from the southwest that it's the track that is so crucial here in terms of how this is going to move through and what type of precipitation you'll be getting. So it looks like it's going to be rain to start for southwestern Ontario. This is into Sunday morning. And then by midday, we're looking at a mix coming through towards the Niagara region, likely pressing through the GTA. Then wet snow closer to the lakeshore, likely more of a rain. Changing into wet snow for portions even back towards southwestern Ontario. Accumulations perhaps over 10 centimeters to the north of the GTA, and then on the backside a bit of a mix once again. Now if that tracks just a little bit further north, then we're going to see rain for the GTA, a little mix and then turning over to rain. So you might want to hope for that, or maybe you want the snow, then you want it to go a little further south. But it looks like it is going to be a wintry mix with more of a wet snow coming in there than it is necessarily rain. Overnight tonight, 3 degrees in southwestern Ontario. Tomorrow, yeah, coming back to 6 to 7 degrees. And then this is what those readings look like as they transition tonight, and tomorrow back to seasonal. And then just very quickly having a look at those numbers, you can see why we're getting into some wintry weather, not only Sunday, but we may be seeing that as well into the overnight hours Tuesday night into Wednesday, and then Wednesday night again.
Colette, say it ain't snow. Thanks for this tonight, Colette. Have a great weekend.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
A Toronto company is getting a lot of attention with the apocalyptic-looking helmet designed for COVID protection. Visor Technologies went from prototype to production in about 4 months, and now the company has sales in the tens of thousands. Some of their customers include teachers, dentists, doctors, and small business owners. Our Talia Ricci checked it out.
What I'm wearing is our first generation BioVisor 1.0. It is a personal air purifying shield. This is ultimately, it's a powered air purifying respirator. It's a type of protective device that's used in hospitals and industrial environments. But we needed to reformat it for daily life. We needed to make it more practical, and we really needed to get that full face visibility because that was very important to us, that we could see each other, that we could communicate with each other.
What was the motivation for designing something like this?
Living with someone who's immunocompromised, we were very aware of kind of the limitations of face masks. So very early on, we realized that to keep my mom safe, we would need to think about a different way of protecting her. We wear it every time we go somewhere crowded so that we don't bring anything back home. And she wears it every time we have an occasion or we're going to see family members in small groups.
If it's not an appealing option to you, this infectious disease expert says public health measures like masks, hand hygiene, and not touching your face work just fine.
I think at this point, given what we know about COVID and how to prevent its transmission, we know that masks work pretty well in terms of helping to control it. And so the idea of walking around in a big sort of astronaut suit like that is probably a bit extreme.
All right, let's take this thing for a spin and see how people react.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about this guy's get up here.
It's nice. It's nice to get rid from Corona, right? You don't have to wear a mask, and it's nice to breathe.
Wouldn't fit in the car.
It would be awkward in the bus too, actually, during rush hour.
So you probably wouldn't wear it?
If I had a convertible, I might think about it.
It is pretty out there. It is like a futuristic space helmet, but it's 2020.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
I love that even he says it's a little out there. A little self-awareness goes a long way, I think. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and all week. Have a great weekend.